We say the internal audit function in these institutions failed. That's the question on the ground. When we say internal audit in these functions failed. To any of our panelists.
Hi, Bernard. Let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
So, I mean, I would say that yes and then no. And then yes, because of the fact that some of these things that if you refer to the banking crisis that our participant is making reference to, some of the issues that came out of it were clear issues around capital management, were clear issues around liquidity management. And then there were also operational issues that undermined some of these collapse and some of these issues that came up in our banking crisis. Where I'd say yes is that some of these ought to have been known by the internal auditors, because it's not just a one-day event. There are some one-day events that could happen that could wipe out the capital of a business. There's a one-day events that could happen as we are talking about BCP and all of that. But some of these things were not, or most of these things were not a one-time event. That means that these things have been happening over time, for which it's now culminated into that action that happened or that event that happened in our banking crisis. And I think it comes down again to the subject that we are discussing today. What are we looking out for really as an internal auditor? Are you still doing your checking the accounts, checking that signatures have been put on documents, or are you applying some of these technologies to, as Bimpe said, get the insight and most important foresight could happen? I would say that some of the issues that and put by this event, I would say that because some of these audit plans were not structured to deal with, let's say, capital management. Typically, if you look at a bank, how many of our internal auditors or how many of our audits would cover audit of a capital, or audit of capital adequacy, audit of liquidity adequacy? Sometimes we move away from that and then do the controls review, the operational review, and even one causality that was also raised in the report by the BOG was the governance issue. As internal audits, how many times do we check the governance structure of our? When we talk about sustainability of the, we are talking in this age, ESG. We forget about the G part, that it holds the business together. And once we miss things around governance, all other things will fall flat. So yes, I would say that I can put some of the blames at the doorstep of internal audit, because we need to revise our audit plans to capture what is the risky part of our business, what is the risk in doing banking business, and therefore that should be our target for most of the audits that we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I add a couple of comments to what Osei, and I hope I pronounced it well. I like the fact that he spoke to governance issues, and really some of this collapse and failures that we've seen in the financial services sector actually also stem from governance. And just like you said, it's very correct. And so as internal auditors, what is our role with regards to ethics? What is our role with regards to governance structures? What are we taking a look at? Are we so focused on the accounting bit of it or the financial statement bit of it that we are also not taking a look at the other non-quantitative part of controls and those qualitative parts that are very important as well? What sort of governance structures does an organization have? Do we have an overbearing leader that's actually so influential that nobody can say no to him? And what kind of controls do we have in place in terms of maker checkers sort of controls? Can somebody just sit down and start off and complete a transaction by himself? Those sort of things are critical for internal auditors. So and just like you said, I actually agree that some yes could have been placed at the doorstep of internal auditors, that these are things they could have seen. I think because the internal audit profession itself is evolving, and the way we do internal audits was actually quite lean and focused towards financial statements sort of controls. Now our review should actually be entity-wide and should span beyond just financial reporting. So the reality is that indeed the role of internal auditors becomes more important when it comes to the growing concern of an entity. Just to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Asante. Thank you, Bimpe, for that. And it comes back to what we've been speaking about, that internal auditors need to look beyond what the compliance things we check, and just looking at the operational structure. You're supposed to check other things like governance, as I mentioned. I see a hand. I'll give opportunity to that person to ask the last question for this, and then we'll continue with the panel discussion. So please, I'm giving you access to unmute your mic and then speak. Please go ahead to unmute yourself and speak. I can't see a name. I just see meeting guests. I've given you the permission to unmute your mic and speak, so please go ahead. All right. I think there's another hand. That'll be the last try. As a second hand I saw, so let me allow you to. I think it's Ebenezer. Kindly, Ebenezer Kwesi, Asa, please go on and ask your question. I'm giving the permission, unmute your mic and then ask the question, please.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Ebenezer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. I just wanted to add up. You see, with the internal audit, I'm looking at the fact that sometimes when the internal auditors or the personalities involved cannot hold their integrity due to the powers within management and other factors within the organization, it also downplay their credibility and the ability to work on issues that will help the organization. Because it might also be that this financial crisis that we experience, as we are talking about internal audit, they might have brought out their issues, but were curtailed by top power and other authorities, you see. And because internal auditors are employees of the organization, definitely some of these things will happen. So I think it's about time, if it is structure, regulation, we revamp it and then make sure that the right things are done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebenezer. And I see one of my team members wanting to contribute to this, a manager with KPMG. Kenneth, please unmute your speak.
Hello, Bernard. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Right. So there's something I want to add to what Bimpe alluded to, and also what Asenso said, that contributed to the role internal audit played in the crisis that occurred. There are quite a lot of things that happen with the banking space, and for internal auditors, getting used to the traditional audit of, assessing controls and processes and making recommendations and all that becomes very easy and comfortable for you to do. Someone made mention of the issue of integrity. That really breeds non-acceptance, particularly at the level of board or senior manager. People cannot trust what you do. It becomes difficult for them to accept the things you tell them. That can even lead them into trouble. And that thing also has to do with competence, because one of the things you realize across borders, there are a lot of things that really go into the issues that cause banks to happen, particularly the capital side. If people don't know what actually goes into capital management, how can they audit it? You can't audit what you know. And if you are not auditing the thing that you don't know, how then do you provide these insights to the people who make these strategic decisions? So what then happens is there are some strategic risks that the banks face that internal audit perhaps does not have coverage on. So if you don't know particularly what goes into capital adequacy, what goes into capital management, and these are the things we have built models on that are churning out outputs that feeds into the strategic decisions made at the board level, it becomes difficult for you to prefer any form of advice that the leadership of any bank or an organization can actually rely on to make decisions. So the competency within some of these areas that generate insights for strategic decision making is very critical. And as internal auditors, the moment you lose that you need to build capacity within those areas, it impacts the value that you have within the organization. And once that happens, your credibility becomes questionable because people cannot trust that the very critical information that they need to be able to make some of these strategic meetings, you have what it takes to even advise them on where they are heading to. So it's one of the things that I believe probably caused some of these things, and we can place lack of competence in the audit of some areas at the doorstep of the internal auditors. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth, for that addition. And I'll say thank you for setting precedents for my next set of questions for our panelists. And I'm glad you were speaking at that time because I could see them taking virtual water and virtual coffee. So we'll go back into the panel discussion. The questions and the hands, we have not ignored you. We will have a question and answer session at the end, and we will give you the opportunity to speak. We'll go back to our panelists and continue with our discussion. So in Ken's last statement, he was talking about building capacity and internal auditors missing out on some things because they don't know. You can't audit what you don't know. And there might be a big question that does that mean internal auditors will know everything? Or sometimes there's a need to collaborate to deliver on internal audit stuff. So my next question is to Asenso, is how can internal audit collaborate more effectively with other departments? For example, IT, compliance, to ensure a holistic view of organizational risk. Thank you.
All right, sure. Thank you very much, Bernard, for that. So I think it's important, as you rightly mentioned, we are internal auditors, we are auditors, but going back to the definition of even internal audits, there's that advisory role in there that we're expected to play. I would say that collaboration is very important. One, even on the back of your preamble, that you definitely cannot know everything, and therefore you need to relate, you need to engage more to understand the things that you ought to do to be able to have an effective audit. Now, there's what we call combined assurance. If you go into most of the businesses, especially financial or even the regulated institutions, you see more different units performing different assurance functions. I think it's important for that collaboration to happen. And how can this happen? We need to look at how audits, I believe, starts from the risk assessment, okay? Understanding what the objective is, understanding what could go wrong in there. So there's a need for these parties providing assurance for businesses to start off together, to say that what are the risks that our businesses together, whether it's from compliance, whether it's from internal audits, whether it's from operational rigor, whether it's from internal controls, what are the key risk areas for a business? And once we look at it from that together, I believe that these assurance parties could share or even develop the risk register that serve as a key document for us to conduct some of these audits. That you share that document, you share that risk register, and then you coordinate the plan to do it so that we don't have duplication. Again, it is all about providing value to the business, and it's all about following risk-based. So once we are all aligned together as risk assurance providers on what the key risks are, once we are aligned on what we are going to look at, once we are aligned on what the key strategies of the business are, we can coordinate efforts and collaborate to deliver the assurance that afford us to do that cross-training and cross-learning that we need to do, so that once we are building ourselves up, we know that we are doing this and we are able to complement and augment, the team to be able to have an effective audit. So I believe that, yes, the collaboration is very important, especially given the age we have, where we have disruptions and so many complexities showing up. Thank you.
Thank you, Asenso. And two things I picked from what you said. Collaboration helps us avoid duplication of efforts and also helps in capacity building. Because once an internal auditor is doing that collaboration, you pick up the necessary skill sets in those gray areas. Thank you very much. My next question is to being paid. And I want to find out that in your experience, how can internal audit leadership foster a culture of collaboration across different functions in an organization? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Osei has said it first, building this into the audit plan. From the onset, you have all the, subject matter experts coming together, to plan towards, the way the audits will be conducted. It's very important that is actually a structure that is put in place and must be adhered to. So I agree perfectly with everything that it said with regards to that collaboration. When you have that collaboration built into your structure, you build capacity. The individuals themselves build the network amongst themselves. They garner, the knowledge that they need over time. So everybody, there's flow of information and knowledge. Everybody then understands a bit of what the other person is doing, despite the fact that experts are they have the deep knowledge, but they still have an understanding of what the other person is. Collaboration is very key. But beyond collaboration, what leadership can do to foster that culture within an organization is also to tell internal auditors, ourselves, that we are doing something, and our role within an organization is to add value. We are not police. We are not there to catch people. We are not there to wield the big stick. So the kind of collaboration that you will get when you tell people that, look, I'm here to help you. I'm here to assist you. We are here to do this together for the good of an organization is actually a better way of that culture. And people tend to then become more relaxed and more open, and in such a way that they would then actually tell you, even as an auditor, as an auditee, I think there's a flaw here. What do you think? What suggestions can you come up with? What recommendations do you have for us to close this gap, or for what appropriate controls should we put in place to ensure that things work well? So you get more information when the mindset that you go in with is actually more collaborative, more assuring, more comforting, you have that listening here, and people see you as somebody coming here to help, as against somebody coming here to catch. And so that culture must be, communicated to every single internal auditor within an organization. And, that campaign must also go around across the organization to show people that internal auditors are your friends, just like we say police are your friends, that we are not police, but we are indeed your friends. We're here to help you. I think that's really very, very clear. That something that would help, to build that culture. The other thing is that part of our processes, so what's part of our responsibilities or our activities, whenever we conduct our audits, we should look at things from a bigger picture perspective. So for every single thing that we see that we want to report on, think about the impact, think about the significance, and then actually, advise. There's some things that are clearly significant, that have significant impact. There are some that are actually minor and can be dealt with when you say, look, I noticed this, I think you can easily correct this by just doing this. So you should have that mindset of, what are those significant things? What are those risky things that could crash an organization, that can cause a material misstatement, that can actually impact negatively on the business? So the culture that leadership should actually, communicate to us as internal auditors is that, take a look as you're conducting your activities, take a look at the bigger picture and tell us what can be catastrophic, what are significant from a risk-based perspective. And, any other issues that you see, put them in the management letter, try to help the people within the group or the auditing unit that these are things that you can easily see. So I think those are some of the, steps that can be put in place to foster that collaborative culture within an organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I kept smiling because on some engagements I've faced the whole "you are police, you're here to catch us" kind of experience. So saying that we leading the way, telling them we are here to help instead of to catch, to actually lead the way in fostering such such relationships. Thank you very much for that explanation. And I want to check in quickly. Doc, please, can we hear from you? I was waiting a bit. Doc. Okay, so we'll continue with Mr. Thompson, who will give us an update on that later on. So we'll continue. And my next question is to Asenso. And it's on one thing. We want you to share an example with your work at KPMG, telling us on how regulatory changes have necessitated some adjustment to an audit approach. Thank you.
Hi, Bernard. So thank you very much. I mean, in recent times, we've seen a lot of regulations come up, and rightly so, because a lot of things are happening that we need some standardization and some policy direction from the top, just to regularize and then set, a good pace for a lot of things to happen. And with all these regulatory changes, definitely need to affect our internal audit plan. So there's a need, or it's imperative that we always make room in our audit plan for some of these adjustments. Other than that, you miss out on the big risk, and then participants asked around the banking crisis issue. A lot of things came as a surprise to most of these banks. So yes, regulations are changing, and as regulations are changing, audits also need to change in order to still follow the risk and then ensure that objectives that businesses set have been realized. So one of the example that readily comes to mind, off the back of even this example that our participants shared in terms of the banking crisis, we know that post put in place. For instance, things around our governance issue, given that it was a very key factor in this crisis around our governance. Now, fit and proper directive, there's a whole corporate governance directive that the banks were to follow. So given that these regulations have come up, and the Bank of Ghana, which is the regulator, also expected banks to, from time to time, report on some of these things and even have it included in their financial statements. So we needed to, as part of our audits for a client, we needed to look at this separately, because one, it's a risk to the bank, and then two, it's a compliance factor that the regulator, wants the banks to comply with. So some of these regulations required that we change our internal audit approach to meet it. Another big one that I can also talk about is in terms of SOX. Now we see that it's becoming a very big trend even here. I believe that BMP will discuss that it's been there in Nigeria for a while now, but for here it's becoming a trend, and it's driven mostly by our multinational businesses. This internal controls over financial reports, and with this coming up now, as internal auditors, we need to now look at the controls for our financials. One of the days that we just look at some process controls, some operational controls, and typically we would relegate the financial audits to our external auditors to look at. But now, given this regulation and this expectations of our businesses, our internal audit approach is changing to include that as a key area that we need to look at and audit. That what are the controls that are supporting these numbers that we are churning out? I know that Ken spoke earlier about some of the big models that are churning out numbers that even internal auditors, we do not, or we shun away from it because it's typically not our area, But with these regulations coming up, internal auditors ought to change their approach to cover that. And rightly so, as experience that we have had with some of our clients, we see that now most businesses, especially as I said, the multinationals, companies that have links to some of these international companies, and our banks that per regulations in other jurisdictions are required to do this, are doing that, going after the controls behind these numbers. So yes, regulations will keep on changing. but it's imperative on our side as internal audits to make our audit plan flexible to accommodate some of these changes and then follow suit. Thank you. Any
Thank you very much, Asenso. And you answered another question, so I wouldn't ask it, but it just throws light on how it's important to consider the regulations as you go to conduct your audit. As if a regulation is no longer in use, how it has been updated, you using an old internal audit approach will render your reports redundant. So thank you very much, Asenso, for that. I now want to looking at the discussions we've had. I want to focus on, we've spoken about where we are, how we are changing. We're talking about emerging technologies. We're talking about the risk associated with them. Now, I want to ask another question, and this will go directly to Bimpe. It's a question on, we've looked at skill sets. Asenso came up and mentioned something on capacity again, on how internal auditors would naturally avoid the data that these models are churning. So I want to ask a question, and it's to Bimpe, is to tell us we want you to tell us how the firm is investing in developing the next generation of internal audit talent.
Okay. Thank you. And it's actually not just the firm and other organizations as well. So the first thing, for the next generation, individuals themselves, first and foremost, acquire your certifications and without that, you cannot actually hold your head high and say that you're an internal auditor. It's very important that you pass your exams and you pass them on time and you pass them well and you pass them with understanding. Now, the next step would then be for the organization you work for, the organization you want to join, to then actually, send you out on training. We're having a session. What is this session all about? It's about actually, upskilling, getting to know what's happening and, pointing you to the right direction as a future internal auditor, or as a current auditor, thinking about what the future holds for you. So the reality is that, yes, there will be training programs that an organization will put you on that would enable you skill up, garner more knowledge, become more skilled, gain that competence that you need as an internal auditor. The other thing that I do know that organizations and the firm that we do is on-the-job training. So when you get on the job, you are assigned a senior who will tell you your responsibility, how to go about it, what to do, and then you start testing it. So on-the-job training is a very good way where you start learning the skills and you start becoming more competent on the job. When jobs come, you want to do it, you're put on a job, you do it well. You're asked, you put in other type of jobs as well, you do it. So the learning actually comes from doing varied types of work over time, and then you become a seasoned internal auditor. One thing that I want to put on the table, that's critical as an individual, is that you also need to continuously upskill yourself. We've spoken about how things are changing and how internal audit will be in the future. So I'll tell you what I have done as an individual, and we are continuous. We are still we are still skilling up, even as the fact that I'm a partner in KPMG, and I'll tell you that I learned, because of the technologies, the evolving technologies. I learned how to code in Python. I learned some machine learning algorithms. I actually learned how to use AWS. I have 3 certifications in data analytics, all by myself. That's been determined to say, I'm not just going to be that chartered accountant, have my certification in internal audit and then stop at that, because that's not what is going to help me in future. I need to go beyond that. And so right now, what it means for me is to acquire those basic skills that will make me understand what data analytics is. I spoke to those visualization tools, being able to use them. Visualization tools will become so commonplace in the future, just like PowerPoint is today. So the reality is that you must skill up yourself. Organizations are also doing that. The firm is doing that by actually putting out technical trainings with regards to things like this that will give you those base understanding. But beyond those technical training, you also need to put in a lot more. You must show the interest, you must show the passion, you must be dedicated that, yes, I want to be better and I want to become a seasoned internal auditor. So yes, organizations are doing what they can. I can tell you KPMG is doing what it can for our people with regards to training, both technical and non-technical. But as an individual, please don't rest on your horse. Just continue to put in your efforts. Thank you very much, Bernard.
Thank you, Binky. I can dare to say that choosing internal audit as a profession, a commitment to it is a lifelong learning.
It is.
We should be ready to do for ourselves as much as organizations are doing for us, even more so, because the certificates are even in our name. So thank you very much for that. I open the chance now for some questions and answers, and my team has prompted me with time, but I'll try and take a number, and we will come back to our panelists, and then we'll move on with what we have for tonight. So I see a hand up, Henry Delali. Please unmute your mic and then ask your question. Henry Delali, please, your hand is up. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, hello. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Yeah, I want to go back a little. My question has to do with our part of the world. Are we really ready for the whole internal audit thing? And then, if so, how are we making the populace understand the work of the internal auditor before we even go on? Because it seems a lot of people do not really understand what the whole thing entails. So they see internal auditors as enemies in a way. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I've noted that one down. I'll take another one, then our panelists will speak. So you're asking is Africa really ready or accepting of the profession? If not, how are we helping the antagonizers rather than seeing us as friends? So I've noted that one down. I'll take another question and our panelists will speak to that, please. Any question? I see Constant, please, I've given you permission. Kindly unmute your mic and speak.
Hello.
Yes, Constant Adebu, we can hear you. Kindly go ahead.
Yes. Please, good evening.
Good evening.
Please, I wanted to know, in a country, holistically, in a country like Ghana, where our democracy is tilted towards, political affiliations and all that, and this serves as a barrier for the internal audit to do their work effectively and to make sure that whatever goals they want to achieve, they achieve. But we can see that our institutions are mostly, dominated by or ruled by these political leaders who, pay their authorities. You just have to align to their will and do whatever that they say you should do. How do we come out of this situation as a country at large? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Constant. And we'll go back to our panelists, and I'll just go over the questions. The first one is Africa really ready or accepting of the internal audit profession? We are rather antagonized than supported through our work. So how do we handle that as internal auditors? And the second one is, in a country like Ghana, where our democracy is still developing, and we have some political figures playing important roles in companies, how does the internal auditor thrive in such a situation? So these are panelists. These are the two questions. Thank you.
Hello, Bernard. All right.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Henry, for the first question. And if I understand, Henry is asking how can we make our board and our businesses, realize the value that internal audits bring to the table and therefore provide them with the necessary supports that they deserve. I would say that one, I think to build that culture of risk awareness at the top. We are a line of defense, and we work with people. But as you mentioned earlier, Bernard, unless somebody knows the value of something, definitely you would not take it as serious as it is, right? So I would say that we need to communicate the value of internal auditors, or the value of internal audits, to our board and then to our management and to all the stakeholders that we are involved in, so that they see the relevance of that. And we need to also provide actionable insights from the little work that you've gotten the chance to do as an internal auditor in your business. How have you shown the relevance or the importance of that exercise? Are you doing it, as we say, as a policeman? You go there, you come up with all your jackets, with your pen, your laptop, and set the table, ask all the questions the hard way. If people don't see you as part of the business and see you as somebody coming out, somebody trying to put their job, threaten their job, I mean, they will also not deal pleasantly with you as you want. So as an internal auditor, we need to build that collaboration. Know that you are part of the business. Your role is not just audits. Your role is to provide value to the business. So once you're able to make the business, whether management, whether the board, or whether even the stakeholders that you are dealing with, to understand this value, I think they will appreciate the work of the internal audit. And it's also important that we build relationship in our work. As an internal auditor, you are part of the business. You need to relate to the people more. You need to understand the process from their perspective, because trust me, I think somebody put it in the chat. You don't know everything, and you definitely not know everything. The process owner that you are going to review, understand the process, but you can only help the business and bring the value to the business once you're able to have the best of discussion with them and be able to identify the key risks that we are talking about in these processes, and be able to prefer the recommendations that help the business to achieve that objective. So one, it's important that as internal auditor, we build relationship in wherever we find ourselves, in the business. It's important that we demonstrate value to the business, demonstrate value through the insights and foresights that we come with, and we're able to communicate clearly what our purpose is, not to set business back or not to police anyone, but the ultimate purpose is to drive value and deliver that same to the business. Thank you.
Thank you, Atenso, for that.
Thank you,
I see you want to speak.
Yes, I just want to add to what Asenso said before I try to tackle the second question. I think the communication bit is very important. People do not know the value that we bring, and we're very important to organizations, So part of what we need to do is in the communication, is in the creating the awareness of who we are and what we do. And that's where thought leadership articles is also very critical. We must write about what we do. We must write about our profession. We must actually blow our trumpet, so to speak. And I like the idea of thought leadership articles, because people then tend to read and then understand that there's this profession that has a whole lot of things to add to an organization, and it's very, very valuable. That for me is very critical. And thought leadership these days are also evolving. Initially it was a whole lot of article writing. Right now, we are going the social media route. We are doing quite a lot of, what we're doing here, right here, collaborating with different professional organizations, different professional institutes, regulatory bodies, other organizations as well, creating this awareness, because it is not just individuals or personnel from both our organizations that are here. There are external people here too, listening, and then they get to know exactly what it is that we do and how we do it. So radio jingles, print media, social media, we are out there talking about what we do, educating people about what the profession is, also actually bringing, topical issues, to the fore, and how internal auditors can help. And these are ways through which we can actually create that awareness to the market and let them know that there are these professionals called internal auditors, and they are very valuable to our organizations, and they are actually very necessary for them to be in an organization. I think that's one. Communication is very key, the way we go about it. Okay, the second question, politics. Oh, that's it's a pervasive issue across Africa. And indeed, what I would say here is that as professionals as well, we can't hide in our corners and say that, no, we don't want to participate in politics. Because politics is for those that participate in it. That's the reality everywhere. So if we want to make changes as technocrats, we need them to put up our hands and say, I am interested and I want to go and change what's happening within the political landscape and make a difference and do the right thing. That is the way to go. I mean, I don't think there's too much we can say with regards to politics and the fact that our politicians may be slightly differently wired than we are. But the reality is that make that change, and in making that change is participating in whatever way that we can to make the change, putting up our hands to say, I want to do this. I want to be in one advisory committee. I want to, add value by writing, writing in print media and social media, coming up with ideas that people would actually learn from, and people will demand, will see you as a thought leader and say, yes, this person is telling the government what they need to do from an auditing perspective, how government agencies need to be audited, the need for them to actually come up with financial statements, the need for them to do the right thing, put in appropriate controls. We need to continuously, put ourselves out there so that politicians will learn from us, and I think that's the way to go. That yes, we may be steps ahead of politicians when it comes to, understanding of some of these critical issues. But if we do not actually demonstrate that we know and we add value that we can add, they wouldn't know as well. So I think that would be my advice in simple terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asenso and Bimpe, for your answers to the questions. I've been signaled that I'm running out of time at this point. I wanted to take some 2 questions, but I'm sorry I can't. I will then move back to the panel discussion and we'll take some few cues from our panelists. And if I'm able to negotiate with my auditees, who are now my team members, we'll try and get one more question. That's just by the way. So this goes to Asenso. Your concluding thoughts on the profession. What excites you most about the future of internal audit? Hello. Okay. Asenso. All right, then I'll take the next informant, Bimpe, as we wait. So, Bimpe, please, what key piece of advice? So and as you're doing this, please, you can also be giving us your closing statement as panelists with this question as well. What's your key piece of advice that you give to someone looking to build a successful career in internal audit? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I thought I had unmuted myself. So yes, I think I've said this before. You just keep developing yourself. Just take it that, look, things are changing, and what you know today is certainly not what will be useful tomorrow. So as things are changing, please immerse yourself in it and try to make sure that you keep abreast of recent happenings. Regulatory changes are happening as well. What are the demands of regulators? What are those guidelines they are putting out? Be a master in this field. I think that would be my advice to anybody that wants to be successful in this field, that wants to actually be known as a subject matter expert, is that you continuously develop yourself. You don't feel that you've achieved it all as of today. It is changing fast, and you must continuously improve. That would be my advice. The other thing again is that as you're developing professionally, you also seek as well to add value to the society. I think it was Asenso that mentioned something about ESG. I think it's something I want to put on the table. Our contributions as individuals, as a group, as a body, our environment, and also the social issues that we have around us. Be a contributor for good. Speak up for what is right. Be a human rights activist in this simple way that you can. Let you bring yourself out there. Let's be known for something good. And I think that's also one of the values as internal auditors that we must also have from an ethics point of view. We must be known to be ethical. We must be known to add value to the environment. There are social issues going on there. Add value to it, contribute to it, put out your time, your resources to it, and continuously to the future internal auditor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bingpe, for that. You said it through it all, that commit to building your capacity, and you've added that we should make meaningful contribution towards environmental and social causes. Thank you very much. And Asenso, you want to take what excites you about the future of the profession? Maybe as you add your closing remarks. Thank you.
Hi, Bernard. Yes. Thank you very much. As it was the tagline for Vodafone, the future is exciting, but it comes with the question: are you ready? I think that Bimpe has the points of the readiness about our learning. What excites me about this career or this job is the learning that I keep having every now and then. Because every engagement, every audit is another opportunity for me to learn. And another exciting thing about the internal audit career for me is how you get to help business solve problem and then deliver value. As you sit with process owners to navigate, what the challenges are, what their processes are, how can you make it better? How can you optimize it? How can you help them reduce costs? It always excites me. It always excites me that at least I'm also contributing to building a sustainable business for our clients. I think in closing, what I will say is I always go back to the definition of internal audit, that this career is not just about audits. We sometimes forget the advisory parts. That is one part also that excites me, Bernard. We always need to have that mindset that we are also consultants to the business. And as a consultant, as you go do the audits, you need to always have in mind that you need to solve a problem to deliver impact to our clients. So that, Bernard, will be my closing notes.
So thank you, Asen. So thank you, Bingpe. What do we say to our distinguished panelists? And thank you to Doc Peter. Thank you. Let's virtually show our appreciation to them. Virtual claps, virtual thumbs up. Thank you very much for the knowledge you've shared with us and your experience. And I believe as upcoming internal audit professionals, we've learned from what you've shared with us, and more so, we've been advised on how to approach the future in our ever-evolving landscape. We are grateful for your time. Thank you. And before we go on, I quickly want to say some things. I'm giving this reminder for the registration link. We will want you to fill that link so we can keep communicating with you. And at the end of the entire webinar, we have a form, an evaluation form. We would like to hear from you. We would like to do more of these webinars, and your voice counts. We want to become better. We want to do better than we have done today. We also want to say, look out for an internal audit awareness, webinar and panel discussion in May that will come. So we'll need your evaluation. So we'll do that big and better. And lastly, too, I want to say, so as KPMG, we are partnering with ProPac, and on, as being said, there's something on sustainability. We are having a sustainability drive for 3 days at the conference center. You're all invited to it. On the second day, which is the 24th, so it's running from 23rd to 25th April. On 24th April, KPMG is hosting 2 conferences. You're invited. We are dubbing this Winning with Sustainability, and we are going to have discussions that are going to help all of us creating awareness on sustainability, and we are going to have discussions. The discussion is going to border on waste to wealth, empowering sustainable innovation in emerging markets. You're all invited, and we hope to see you there. One of the things we'll be doing, we'll have what we call an ESG clinic. It will be a booth where we have professionals there to continue the conversation on ESG with regards to every other subject. So that's it for me for this. Thank you all very much again for your audience. And then once again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have done this. So I'll pass the time over to Rohaina to take over, my colleague Rohaina to take over and continue the webinar. Thank you very much.
All right. Hello, good evening. And thank you so much, Bernard. That was an excellent moderation there. So my name is Rohaina, an assistant manager with KPMG. Kindly permit me to share my presentation. All right, so today I will be taking you through internal audits and internal controls and what it means for us at KPMG. So this will be the content of the presentation. Now, there's been a lot of discussion around the paradigm shift as to what internal audit is, from a mere compliance-focused approach to a more strategic and a risk-oriented approach. Now, our businesses operate in a complex and dynamic world, and as it keeps evolving over time, it's imperative that the internal auditor has to expand its scope of activities to be able to assess risk and add value to a business and act as a strategic business partner to a business. Now, currently on my screen are 2 big companies that in the early 2000s were one of the giants in the industry. Now let's look at Nokia. Growing up as a young child, I always wanted to own a Nokia phone. Now today, if you pass me that phone, I'll reject it. Why? Because now Nokia is out of the telecommunications business and the mobile providing services. So now today, everybody wants to be affiliated with the Apple phone. Why? In the early 2000s, Nokia was one of the biggest cellular and network providing company that invented its first smartphone in 1996, owning over 50% of share in the mobile sector business. But years down the line, Nokia has to move out of that space because Apple, one of its biggest competitors, came into the space and had to kick Nokia out of business. Now, this is an evidence of an operational risk and also a strategic risk that Nokia failed to identify, assess, and then provide certain mitigants that would help them to survive in the business. Now, Kodak too was one of a revolutionary name when it comes to the photographic film market that provided cameras for the average household. Now, years down the line, Kodak has to be kicked out of the business. It went bankrupt in 2012 due to the fact that it couldn't meet its unending desires for their customers to be able to serve the unending needs of their customers. Now, that boils down to a product risk because the product they were offering to the market was not meeting the needs of the customers. And now what happens is that they need to be kicked out of the business because other brands came in that could serve the needs of these customers. Now, the picture to the right is a cameraman in a helicopter. Now, we used to wonder how we could have a 360 view of a particular landscape. Now, this was done because the photographer and the helicopter have to go around to take those photographic pictures for us to be able to appreciate those landscapes. Now, 10 years down the line, in 2020, came the evolution of drones. Now, today, a drone can easily do that from a centralized point. So why do we even need the cameraman and the pilots in the first place? So today, they are being kicked out of business because they failed to identify the competitor risks for them to be able to put in certain measures that would help them to grow as a business. Now, having said that, as a business, every minute, every second, every single day, there are certain risks that we are being exposed to that could affect us being able to achieve our strategic objectives. Now, according to the IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, risk is a possibility of an event that could hinder us from achieving our objectives. Now, let me give a classical example today when we had to start our webinar. Now, the organizers knew that there was a risk that there could be some technical glitches. So we had to have some people on standby. In the case where there's a technical glitch, we could easily fall back on our backups to be able to ensure a seamless webinar. And that was why at the beginning, even when we encountered a glitch, we were able to pass over it because we knew a risk like this could crystallize, and we had to have our backup to be able to mitigate such a risk occurring that could hinder us from achieving the objectives of this webinar. Now, as a business that operates in an ecosystem, we are constantly being exposed to different types of risk. But as a business, we need to be able to identify these risks, to assess the impact and what it means for us as a business, and how we can bring in certain solutions that would still help us to be able to achieve our objectives in the midst of these risks. Now, the ultimate goal of every business is to be able to make profit that would translate into cash for us to be able to succeed and grow, expand our business operations. But in the event where a risk arises and we are unable to identify and curb these risks, what happens is that we end up being kicked out of business because we are unable to prevent the crystallization of these inherent risks that are parts of our business processes, that are part of the people we work with, that are part of the technology that we use as a business to operate. And as a business, to be able to stand the test of time, to be able to ensure that we constantly deliver excellent services to our customers, we need to constantly understand what the needs of our customers are. So the ultimate goal again of a business is to ensure that they are consistently delivering services that go beyond the expectation of customers. And these customers eventually become our brand ambassadors that will be able to sell the service without us having to even put in more effort in advertising. Now, sometime I read something in the article that McVitie's doesn't do any adverts, but still the brand is selling because the brand has stood the test of time. And we, the consumers of these products, constantly sell these products to our fellow consumers. So it's like a snowballing effect. So as a business, if you are unable to identify these risks and mitigate it, and they crystallize, our customers go a long way to tarnish the image of our brand. And when this happens, we'll end up shutting down operations because we are unable to mitigate these risks. Now let's go through certain risks that a typical business is being exposed to. Now, the interesting thing about risk is these risks that are currently being projected, they are intertwined. Now, let's look at the product risks. The fact that a competitor can come in and kick you out of business because your product is failing to meet the needs of the customers. Now, that's evident in the Nokia case, that when the phones were going through the test of time, we moved into the Gen Z world, but still, Nokia wasn't evolving to meet the taste of their consumers. So what happened? They had to fall out of business. Now, as a business, we operate in an ecosystem. And what it means is that we are supposed to comply by certain standards. There are certain regulations that guide our operations wherever we operate in. And there are lots of laws that we need to abide with. Now, what happens is sometimes as a business, when we've stood the test of time, we've operated for a very long time, we tend to overlook some of these risks. And what happens is, at the end of the day, our licenses might be revoked because we failed to comply with a particular standard, which brings me to a classical example of what happened the time when some licenses of certain banks were revoked. The issues that came up were because they failed to comply to certain standards of the Bank of Ghana, which is their regulator. And in the end, their license had to be revoked. And what happened? They had to shut down operations because of a compliance risk. Now, when we look at an operational risk, these are risks that happen in a day-to-day activity of a business. Now, some months ago, an issue came up about CBE Bank in Ethiopia. Now, CBE Bank is one of the biggest banks in Ethiopia with a portfolio of 38 million account holders. CBE Bank has operated for over 82 years. So, of course, they believe that they have a business model that has been tried and tested, stood the test of time, and is working for them. But what happened? Just a single day, there was a system glitch to their core banking application, and customers were able to withdraw from ATMs, do transfers over their account balances, leading the bank to lose over $40 million just in a day. Now, that was because of a technical issue. But a big question here is it because of a control issue? Is it that there were no that particular risk had not been identified in scope? And that in the case of it crystallizing, what can the bank do to mitigate the impact? Now, strategic risk is a risk of a business strategy failing. Clearly, in the case of Kodak, the strategy they had that had run for a very long time was to produce hard copy photo pictures for their customers. Now, people were moving towards the digital age. They wanted something digital, but Kodak failed to evolve with that. And what happened? They had to leave the market for the other companies that were willing to suit the needs and serve the customers to come into place. Now, that is an example of a strategic risk. Now, some businesses fail to constantly monitor their strategy to see if it's standing the test of time and to see if there are any risks that could prevent them from achieving their strategic goals. Now, all of these risks will eventually tie down to a financial risk. Like in the case of CBA, they lost over $40 million. Now, in the event that the bank is unable to recoup all of these funds, what happens? It means that they might run out of cash, and the reputational risk will definitely arise. Because as a rational customer, if I hear this about my bank, the first thing I'll do is to join the queue in the morning or even sleep there with the watchman. Immediately they open the door, I'm there to withdraw all of my money because I'm afraid that my money is no longer safe. So once these risk crystallizes, the bottom line, what it leads to is a reputational risk. And as a business, what we need to do is to constantly ensure that we get good feedbacks from our customers. And feedback is very, very important because as a business, you'll be able to identify what exactly the needs of the customers are and what you can do to address it. And so once there is a review that is given to you as a business, you need to take the review and look at what you can do to address the needs of your customers. So just one bad review, just one bad customer review can bring a business down to its knees. And that is how powerful a reputational risk can be. Now, looking at ESG, I'm sure we remember the case of Mawako when I think there was an issue about some unfair treatment to some of their employees. What happened? Some people stopped going there to eat just because of this social, affiliation to the fact that some unfair treatments were being done to certain employees. So as a business, we need to constantly assess our business, assess the ecosystem in which we operate in, and clearly identify the risks that we can be exposed to. Now, having said all that, the big question here is, as a business, how can you identify all of these risks? Because the question I'm sure you might be asking is, the risks are too many, so how can I identify these risks and even put in certain controls that will help me to mitigate these risks? Now, that is where KPMG comes in as a strategic solution partner. Over the time, we have provided assurances to multiple industries across different industries, provided risk management advice to organizations to enable them achieve their financial, operational, and compliance objectives. Now we bring in fresh perspectives from different insights, different experiences that we've worked over time. We have tried and tested methodologies that have worked across different industries to be able to perform and analyze assessments of data and business processes. And as well, there's an objective point of view when we come in as an objective source to provide expert advice on how to efficiently and diligently identify these risks, test the controls that are in place if they are robust enough, and provide recommendations that can enable a business to achieve its strategic objectives. Now, how do we do this as a firm? We do this by providing you with our bouquet of services across the internal audit and internal control function, by providing internal audit outsourcing services. So here we assume the responsibility of your internal audit function, streamline the operational processes, review them, and advise on certain critical risks and provide control recommendations that can help you as a business to be able to operate efficiently and effectively. Now, we also provide internal audit core sourcing services. So here we partner with your internal audit function to provide you with the experience, expertise from our talented pool of individuals who have expert industry knowledge in terms of internal audits, internal control jobs. And we also provide certain specialized audits that maybe your skill set of internal audit units might not have. So we come in, work hand in hand with you to be able to help you achieve your strategic objectives. And there's a big question of who audits the auditor. And that's where IPPF came in with a standard that every organization should at least 5 years, once in every 5 years, subject its internal audit function for an external quality assessment. And what that means is you need to let an independent person come in to check how your internal audit unit is strategically providing you with expert knowledge, deep understanding of internal controls, and how they can effectively support you as a strategic business partner to enable you achieve your objectives. So the IAA seeks that these standards need to evaluate the accuracy and the reliability of the internal audit units. And that's where KPMG comes in to support you, provide you with that assessment, look at the people, if they have the right expertise, go through the working papers and see if they meet the current methodologies, if they meet the current internal audit standards. Now, today we've spoken extensively about COSO, about the SOX and what it does. As also touched on internal controls over financial reporting. Now, we all know every year, every quarter, we run to have a look at how the financials of our companies that we work with, the companies that we've invested in, how the financials are looking. But the fact behind these figures, the controls behind these figures that are being churned out, are they robust enough to support the figures that we are seeing on the face of it? Now, that is where companies come to us as KPMG to say, okay, now these are the figures that are being thrown out for my journal. These are the figures that are being thrown out for my GLs. And eventually these are figures that will feed into the financials. So come in, take a look at these controls and advise, are the controls robust enough? And are the figures accurate? And that's when we come in to provide the internal controls over the financial reporting. And we also provide the professional internal audit loan staff. Now, this is where an organization wants to undertake a particular kind of audit. So maybe within the internal audit unit, there are certain qualifications you're looking at. So you come to KPMG, you tell us, okay, we want to run this particular audit, but we are looking for an auditor who has CIA, an auditor who has ACCA, an auditor who has SEMA. You give us the role profile of what you are actually looking for to do. And we delve into our pool of experts in internal audit, and we provide you with a competent loan staff who will help you to be able to undertake that audit and prefer recommendations that can be used for management decision making. And we also support with an internal audit function services to help you set up your internal audit. So maybe gone are the days when businesses feel like internal audit is not useful, but now internal audit has come to stay. And we are your strategic business partners to be able to help you identify all of these risks that you are being constantly exposed to. So now companies want to establish an internal audit function, but how do they go about it? So KPMG, over the time, we've done that for a number of companies across diverse industries. We help you to set up your internal audit function and provide you with the right skill set that will help you to achieve your objectives. Now, the risk register is very important. It's like the Bible when it comes to rolling out an enterprise risk management, because the risk register would document all of the risk. So the questions are, what can go wrong? What might go wrong? And what will go wrong? So we look at today, we look at the past, we look into the future to fish out and create all of these risks that can crystallize. And we provide you with solutions, we provide you with recommendations that would help you to mitigate the crystallizations of these risks. And even in the event that these risks should crystallize, we have solutions that would cushion you against the impact of these risks. And of course, we also offer internal audit training, equipping your team, bringing them up to speed, giving them all of the knowledge that they need to be able to function effectively in their respective internal audit function. You remember Bimpe mentioned that as an individual, you need to constantly develop yourself. You might have completed your master's, but we need to constantly learn because things change. The internal audit landscape, it keeps evolving all the time. So we also provide you with specialized training to bring you up to speed in terms of things that have changed within the internal audit landscape. Now, having said that, and looking at the evolution of the internal audit, the IIA has come up with a new standard that every business is expected to comply with as long as you have an internal audit function that sits in your business. Now, there are 5 domains that have come up. And under these domains, the first one has to do with the purpose of internal audits, ethics and professionalism, governing the internal audit function, managing the internal audit function, and performing internal audit services. Now, all of these domains have certain guiding principles that businesses are supposed to align to be able to meet these standards. Now, this standard will be implemented on the 9th of January next year. So IIA has given businesses from now till that time to align your process, streamline your operational processes, and see how you would have to operate in order to fit these guiding principles. Now, looking at in-depth understanding of these principles and looking at the rigorous training that we've gone through to fully understand and appreciate what these standards mean to a typical internal auditor, we are in the position to support you through this journey, to be able to streamline the operations and align with these standards ahead of next year when the implementation will take effect. Now, having said that, a wealth of experience across diverse industries I've mentioned already, we also leverage on our extensive network of consultants around the world, our global network, to be able to provide you with that service you need and make sure we meet and exceed your expectations. Over the years too, we have a tailored solution, our tried and tested methodologies that have worked, and we've grown through with several industries. And of course, as a firm, we continuously improve ourselves, continuously steady to be able to provide you with cutting-edge solutions to meet your objectives. Now, our experiences, we've done this before for several industries across multiple industries. We perform internal audit function for Golden Star. We perform an operational review for Rockshore, internal audit courses and services for MTN Ghana. We've supported Pinnacle with the establishment of their IA function, and we've also provided quality assurance to GT Bank. We've also provided technical audits for ECOWAS, internal audit co-sourcing for a number of financial institutions, and we also work with MyLife to render an outsourced internal audit service. And of course, we've also worked with the GSC on outsourced internal audit services, and Coca-Cola Beverage Africa on similar services. All right, so I present to you our KPMG GRCS team, that is the Governance, Risk, and Compliance Services team, with varied experiences, certifications, and qualifications in relevant areas, relevant sectors across internal audits and even beyond internal audits. So this is our GRCS team currently on display. All right, so I end this presentation with a scenario. So just imagine today we see a lion right now, and then we bring a 1-year-old. Now the 1-year-old on seeing the lion will just laugh about it because he sees the lion on his various cartoon networks like Cocomelon. So he knows the lion is a really friendly animal. So the first thing he might be tempted to do is to play with the lion. Now, when you bring the same lion before a 12-year-old kid, you would see how the child will run because he understands and appreciates what that lion can do. The lion is dangerous, so he will definitely flee from it. Now, that is just an example of what risk is. So as a business, if you do not even know the kind of risks that you are being exposed to, it might be difficult for you to be able to mitigate it. That is why we come in as a solution partner to journey with you to help you identify these risks, assess them, and provide you with solutions that would help you to mitigate these risks. All right, so that brings me to the end of this presentation. So I'm open to take any questions and comments from you. Thank you so much for your time. All right, Adelaide, I think you can continue facilitating.
Sure. Thank you, Haina, for that insightful presentation. Thank you, Haina. To wrap up this session, we would like to invite Kenneth Ejaidia to share with us some final thoughts.
Right. Thank you, Adele. First of all, I'd like to thank Amdi Akoto for the deep insights he shared that introduced us to today's discussion. And it was quite elaborate, particularly on how the practice of internal audit has evolved over the years. The evolution has been necessitated by a number of issues, particularly crisis within the business space, which birthed some changing regulations like the Sarbanes-Oxley what we call the SOX. All of these things have contributed to the changes we see in the practice of internal audit. Now, in respect of how technology and then, emerging technology like the artificial intelligence, the use of business intelligence tools like Tableau, Business, Power BI, and all those things have contributed a lot. What is now happening is the internal audits we knew in the past is no more the internal audit of today. Every day things have to change. And Bimpe rightly said that we are moving towards the point where internal audit is going to get real time, where you are using machine learning applications to conduct not just random sampling and all that. You are actually doing a total audit of everything that happened. You are going 100%. So this time, because of the evolution that is coming up, internal auditors are being urged to bring themselves up to speed so that they will be in a position to be useful and provide the valuable insights that businesses will need to provide. So all in all, I think the session has been good. We've learned quite a lot of things. We know the things that have caused the evolutions, what we need to do as internal auditors, how people who have interest in pursuing careers in internal audit have to do. Make sure you are a lifelong learner. Things change all the time. You cannot know everything, but devote time to ensure what you are required to know to be able to audit the things you audit and provide the needed valuable insights to support the decision-making of the people tasked with governance. You will be able to achieve that. So thank you so much to our speakers for providing these valuable insights. And we believe that as we leave this webinar, we will move into our respective spaces as change makers within the space we find ourselves as internal auditors and people who aspire to practice internal audits wherever we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. That was indeed thought-provoking. We will conclude the webinar by inviting Mr. Thompson Kubaji to give us our final closing remark.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I want to start this session by acknowledging all the panelists and the contribution from my dear students to this discussion. It has really been insightful, and at least there's no need going back to reiterate the key issues that have probably been raised. It's my prayer and belief that another day we all by now will be well aware of internal audit and the relevance of internal audit as we move in our businesses and other operational areas. I think key thing that came out clear among the discussion was that the need to develop our skills, and our skills should be tailored toward modernity using the AI-assisted tools, data analytics. It means like Bimpe rightly said, there's a need to do extra courses in areas that are relevant in your data analytics, because at the end of the day, auditing is all about data. But there was an issue that came out along the line that you need not be an accountant to be an internal auditor, but at least I was trying to disagree. You may have the interest, but you end up being an accountant anyway, because the spheres of internal audit span beyond figures. I agree, but primarily you have an advantage with some finance, some accounting background to be able to be a good internal auditor. Now the goal is that I want to make sure that at least there's a lot more effort to bring about education and awareness of internal audit across our aspects, so that we can contribute globally, individually and collectively to improve our internal controls. It's not more about compliance and advisory issues. It's now about risk management. And at least I really appreciate Rohanna for the insightfulness she gave in terms of risk management, because all that we're doing in terms of internal controls is to ensure that we minimize the risk associated with our operations and business. So I want to thank you all, and especially thank my students for their participation. And I'm really very impressed because our attendees went as high as 420, and currently we have about 340. And you can take up the guests, the panelists. It means a good number in attendance, so really encouraging. So once again, on behalf of the Dean of the Graduate Studies, Professor Samuel Entry, who is outside the country, I want to say thank you to the KPMG team and to the UPSA team. So unfortunately, Dr. Aka couldn't continue because of lights off within his area. These are the real risks that probably we did anticipate. For instance, I have to move to other locations to be able to have access to this discussion. So thank you very much, and the good Lord continue to bless us. And we're looking forward to better collaborations that will bring awareness across to our students and potential workers. And I also want to appeal, you don't just probably do the lecture and the webinar, but please open your windows to recruit most of my students into your areas and let them also develop their careers within the internal audits and other areas of your expertise. Thank you, KPMG, and may the good Lord continue to bless us. Thank you.